After 23 years of serving in the Army, I retired. Went into higher education for a few years because my last job in the Army was teaching at West Point, so that kind of felt like a natural transition. After a few years there, I wanted to continue to find ways to serve and moved over here to American Corporate Partners. American Corporate Partners basically helps transitioning service members, veterans, and active duty spouses as they're trying to figure out what they want to do with their next career. So we do that through pairing them up with a mentor, and the mentors are usually exactly in the industry in which they want to get into. Most people in the military take for granted the fact that they have this kind of drive to accomplish the mission, discipline, the ability to work as a team, teamwork, leadership skills, even kind of organizational project management. Also the idea of being responsible for something very important. So all those together usually make for good skills that translate into corporate America.
Hey, so today's guest is Richard Comitz, a retired lieutenant colonel at the U.S. Army and the COO at American Corporate Partners. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thanks, Danny, for having me.
Absolutely. So, what is your story? I've learned a lot about your background, but how would you summarize your professional story?
Well, I'll say I started in the Army, went to West Point, and after 23 years of serving in the Army, I retired. Went into higher education for a few years because my last job in the Army was teaching at West Point, so that kind of felt like a natural transition.
Today, I want to tell you about a book I'm reading. It's written by 25 veterans of the U.S. Armed Forces, all graduates of the Masters of Business for Veterans program at the University of Southern California. The book is called Veteran Stories of Transition and Transformation. It collects the personal stories of veterans written in their own words. Pick it up for yourself or a veteran you love. Check out the link in the description for 10% off.
After a few years there, I wanted to continue to find ways to serve and moved over here to American Corporate Partners about 3.5 years ago to be on the leadership team and really love what we're doing here.
So what do you do at American Corporate Partners now?
So, American Corporate Partners basically helps transitioning service members, veterans, and active duty spouses as they're trying to figure out what they want to do with their next career. So, we do that through pairing them up with a mentor, and the mentors are usually exactly in the industry in which they want to get into, so they can learn about how they can leverage their military experience to in that new industry that they're looking to get into. And I oversee kind of that whole running of that operation, along with interacting with corporate partners, mentors, proteges, communications.
So this is a nonprofit, right?
Yes, our services are free to the veterans and spouses.
And how your own transitioning experience help you better understand how to help others?
Yeah, I think my story is not too different from others in that I was always thinking it wouldn't be too hard or didn't think too much about what transition was going to be like. But I found myself applying to probably in the order of a few hundred jobs, not getting much feedback, not sure if I was completely qualified, seemingly not being able to translate what I did in the military for 23 years into something in a resume that a hiring manager would seek out rather than maybe put aside. So those challenges definitely made me recognize that with my qualifications, having still had a hard time getting out and finding the right job, that there's probably many more people like me out there.
And what are some, you know, skills that people in the military learn that can easily be applied in the corporate American world versus the ones that you need to develop as you transition, and you might not have those skills unless you start working on them as you transition to the civilian world?
Yeah, I think that most people in the military take for granted the fact that they have this kind of drive to accomplish the mission, discipline, the ability to work as a team, teamwork, leadership skills, even kind of organizational project management. Also, the idea of being responsible for something very important. So, all those together usually make for good skills that translate into corporate America. I think some of the things that you have to learn in corporate America is not unlike learning in the military when you change from unit to unit or something like that. You just have to understand kind of how the company that you go into operates, what is kind of the chain of command, if you will, how you can communicate with different parts of the organization and continue to drive towards that mission accomplishment. So a lot of it's not, some new skills you have to learn. You just have to kind of fashion the skills that you had into a way that works in the new system.
And what do veterans often struggle with as they transition into the civilian workforce and the jobs? What are some common pains and things that you're helping them with?
Yeah, I think probably one of the bigger things is figuring out what they want to do. Oftentimes, if people do not want to do exactly what they did in the military, or there isn't a comparable skill, like if you're driving a tank, there's not too many tanks to be driven in the civilian world. So if there's not a direct relationship of a skill that you learned in the military to the civilian world, I think figuring out what you want to do is a difficult part. Mentors kind of help walk you through that a little bit. The other thing I think that's super difficult for a lot of people is just translating what they did in the military to something that would be valuable in the civilian world. Again, especially if it's not something that's directly translatable. Translating what you did in the military to something that would be favorable to a hiring manager. I think those plus networking. I think that oftentimes when you're in the military, your network is the military people. I think when you get out, you have to really expand that network into other areas to learn not only what areas you want to get into, but what it's like to be in those areas and help people along the way.
What I also heard from veterans on the podcast is that many people who retired from the military, they lose their why, or they lose the sense of camaraderie that they had in the army or other branches. How do you help them preserve this idea and this feeling as they, transition into the boring civilian world?
Well, I think there's a few ways. One, with us, you're kind of still connected to some organization that works with the military. So, and then encouraging people to find those organizations that are out there that help. Another thing is when we recommend people as they're looking for new jobs is to find companies that have those systems also built in. So those companies that have resource groups for employees that they can kind of meet other veterans or activities and things like that support veterans. If they are going to a company that has those things, then they will kind of find their new tribe. But I think the other thing, as you kind of mentioned, is making sure that they do select a job that makes them feel like they're part of the team and they have a new mission rather than just a job where they're kind of putting in their 9 to 5 and they don't care what's going on at their job.
Yeah, interesting. Again, I had a bunch of different people on the show, from general officers to, NCOs who have transitioned. And can you help me better understand? Because sometimes I see that after a long career in the military, you might not even need to have a job because the money problem is it, like at other stages you still want to find a new job and to make money. Other people start their own businesses. So how does that work? Just for me to better understand what's the money situation after you retire.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you retire, obviously you're going to get a portion of your base pay back in the retirement pay. Now, the challenge there is that your pay while you're in the military is not only your base pay, but is also other benefits like housing allowances and all that stuff. So your housing all of a sudden is not taken care of anymore, and so then your base pay is reduced as well. So although you can retire from the military and maybe not work, you're going to have to change your standard of living quite a bit to still be able to live within the new salary that you're receiving. So that's why most people do end up finding another job or try to do something to supplement that income because it's usually not enough to maintain the same standard of living that.
And do you ever help veterans who are starting their own businesses, or do you mostly work with people who are looking for jobs?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, last year we found that about 20 or 25% of people coming to us had some interest in starting a small business. And so we started an entrepreneurial program in which they not only get a mentor to help them through that process, but we have a website that is kind of an online community where they can get resources at the various stages of starting a small business or franchise. They can ask, and then there's also a way to ask questions in there so they can kind of crowdsource some information about things that they're struggling with in their business. And that will be answered by members of our staff, other proteges that are in the same situation or mentors that can help.
Interesting. What about those veterans who are really struggling after they transition, whether with mental health issues or something else? How do you help those people?
So first, I'll say that if someone really has a difficult time, that there's other resources that might be better suited to help them with, say, mental health. We're not healthcare practitioners, so I would definitely suggest that they seek professional help if they are in uh, that bad of a shape. But we do see people that are at various levels of challenges in their career. So one, we see that and we believe that having a meaningful career adds to someone's positive mental health. So we're not clinicians, we're not going to help someone that are really having PTS problems, but as they get the help that they need, part of their journey is still going to be providing for themselves and their family. So we think that along the way, we can help increase positive mental health through helping them find a job and having a mentor help them through that process. But we also, as we pair people up with mentors, we have a member of our team kind of follow them along their mentorship. And so if these type of things come up that are questions that the mentor can't handle or answer, then we ask that they refer them back to us, and our team members will find them the resources they need to help them.
Okay, now I like to step back and to look at your career and your leadership philosophy, how it had evolved over the years as you were serving, then you transition into the civilian world. Did your leadership approach to leadership or principles evolve over the years, or do you have some core set of principles that you follow?
Feel like I was very fortunate in the military to learn some good leadership skills and be able to apply them throughout my life. I mean, something as simple as kind of always being the example, thinking myself as being the example, not asking someone to do something that I wouldn't want to do myself or couldn't do myself, carrying myself with high moral ethics and being able to, like I said, have people look up to me as an example on how to behave. That also goes into how you treat people. Sometimes in the military, or sometimes in the civilian world, they think the military are all drill sergeants yelling at people. And I would argue that if you're yelling at someone in the military, you're probably not doing it right. As far as a leader, you should be able to get your subordinates to do what they need to do without yelling, but by being a good example and a good leader. And so I think those I really did not change much when I came into the civilian world because I think those principles of treating people with respect and being the example, making sure that I continue to learn and listen to my subordinates, I think those skills have helped me as I've gone through my transition.
And going back to mentorship, did you have a mentor or mentors who have affected your career, your life as you were raising through the ranks or transitioning?
Yeah, I feel like just about every duty station I had someone that I looked up to, whether it be a commander of some sort, battalion commander, or a direct supervisor. I definitely remember, I'll use who now retired General Pete Jones. Met him in Germany in the second Brigade of the 1st Infantry Division. We were also deployed to Kosovo together. He was a very good example of kind of being that calm, smart, methodical, and influential leader that I continue to try to emulate in my life.
And as you were mentoring other soldiers or in the civilian world, did you use the same approach as a mentor on the other side?
I think so, and there's a lot of great leadership books and podcasts out there now. I think definitely as you talk to people, being authentic, being understanding, listening. Those are very important skills. I also think this idea of kind of stepping back and looking at the situations externally, oftentimes when people are in tough situations, they have a hard time stepping back and looking at the big picture and where they want to go. So trying to help people see that I think has been very helpful as well.
And stepping back to your leadership principles, when you said that you don't want to necessarily yell at people and just tell them what they need to do, but you want to show them the reason why and inspire them. I still think there is a balance between, inspiration and enforcement. And there is a reason why drill sergeants are there as well. So how do you maintain this balance between getting people to do what they need to do versus not being, that the kind of a person who just, completely detached from people and just yells at them all the time?
Yeah, I think there is a balance. I think you have to be able to go to that level of, reprimand, or, whether it be yelling or whatever else, but it shouldn't be the first tool that you pull out. So this idea of getting people to buy into the mission and the task that you're getting them to do, whether that be because it's, they have ideas or input to that task or idea, or they believe in it, I think is probably the most important thing you can do. And then surely if people get out of line, you have to remind them. And if it's not received by just telling them, you're disappointed or that they didn't make the mark, then you may have to ratchet things up. But I think that the yelling and threatening is probably the last resort, because you can only do that so many times before people get numb to it.
And when leading subordinates, making mistakes is a natural process, natural thing to do for all of us. Would you prefer your subordinates making mistakes and learning from them as long as they're, not devastating? Or would you try to teach them to learn from the mistakes of others, or, or not make those kinds of mistakes? So where is that balance in your opinion?
Yeah, I think there's a certain amount of preparation in getting ready to do a task or whatever you're doing. So I would want someone to be, put the research and the time in to be prepared before they do a task, and that, I think, includes learning from mistakes that other people have made. But then, if doing all that preparation they still end up making a mistake, then that's where we want to be able to step back and correct the mistake and learn from the mistake. Luckily, in the civilian world, there's not usually lives at stake. Um, you have the ability to learn from those mistakes a little bit easier than if it was in a military.
Another topic I want to explore with you is uncertainty. On the battlefield, as you said, lives are at stake, and you don't want to make a crucial mistake that would cost lives or of your brothers and sisters or the civilians. On the other hand, in the civilian world, you often face more of long-term uncertainty, whether it's not having a job, or your spouse is sick and you need to take care of them and you don't know what's going to happen in the future. So how do you approach uncertainty and how you deal with it?
I think the biggest thing is, one, as I kind of mentioned, is being, researching and being prepared the best you can for any situation, but also recognizing what you can control and what you can't control. So oftentimes people get anxious or emotional about things that they can't control. So I would just encourage people to take a step back and think about a situation, even if it is something like you said, a spouse being sick, or the uncertainty of losing a job or something like that, and do what they can, look at what they can control in their own life, whether it be the reaction to the situation or preparation for the next situation. I think is probably the most important thing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, because I have found the same principles working for me in my life, and I think that's the only way to thrive in those kinds of environments. Do you have pieces of advice for the listeners, maybe in their early 20s, people who are still looking for meaning and are not sure what they want to do in life?
Yeah, I think it's important to kind of take stock and understand what you like to do, what you want to do. I think it's important to seek out mentors to help you through that. Most of the time, people have done something like you're wanting to do before you, so find mentors to help you with that. ACP is very welcoming to do that, so they can always go to acp-usa.org to sign up for a mentor. I think also super important is networking, getting to know a lot of different people and getting different points of view so that you understand different areas in the world so that you can make better decisions as you go forward. So I think those are probably the biggest things I would mention. And always think about your actions and what you can control, as we mentioned, because getting anxious about something you can't control is not going to be helpful.
And before we end, do you have a final message to the listeners, something that we haven't discussed yet that you want to put out there?
I would just say that everyone out there, there's a place for you. You can be valuable with some company or starting your own company. So just look for that way. Look for help, as I mentioned, through mentorship. We're always happy to help at ACP. And even when times seem tough, you'll get through it. So other people have done that as well. So I'm sure you can do the same.
Perfect. Thank you, sir, for coming over to the show, for sharing your experience and stories. Very valuable. Appreciate that.
Thanks for having me, Danny.